They didn't knock, they didn't announce themselves. The royal guard raided Camilla's private estate under direct orders. And what they found inside? Not dust, not heirlooms, but pieces of the crown that were never meant to leave it. Someone had been preparing to sell them, quietly, permanently. So the guard went in with full royal authority and took them back. And when Camilla tried to stop the operation herself, Prince William landed on the lawn to finish it. This wasn't just about jewellery. It was about memory, trust, and what happens when the wrong hands claim the past. Because that night, the monarchy didn't lose control. It took it back. The inventory log glitched at 6:47. Not dramatically, no alarms shrieking or red lights flashing. Just a tiny line of text blinking on Sergeant Nathan Corbin's screen, tagged with the kind of metadata that most people would scroll right past. Temp Reloc QLPD 192. No signature. No proper timestamp. Just the code of an archivist who hadn't worked the vault in over 2 years. Nathan squinted at his monitor in the dim fluorescent glow of Windsor's legacy chamber. Something felt wrong. He clicked the entry, then clicked again, watching the details unfold like a story that didn't quite add up. Object: sapphire pendant. Owner of record: Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Custody chain: legacy archive to temporary preservation transfer. Destination: Albemarle Heritage Consultants. Authorization: external referral / level 3 clearance. Remarks: pending off-site display curation. The whole thing was nonsense, and Nathan knew it. He'd seen that pendant up close. A teardrop sapphire surrounded by Welsh diamonds, worn by the Queen at Prince Philip's final remembrance service. Never been catalogued for museum display, never loaned out, never mentioned in any of those modernisation memos floating through Windsor these days, like expensive confetti. His fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up the backup logs. 3 more items showed the same suspicious pattern: an emerald coronet, a coronation brooch, and a 4-strand pearl choker that had belonged to the Queen Mother. All tagged Temp Re-LOC within the past 6 weeks. All signed off with the same dead referral code. All routed through the same mystery consultancy, Albemarle Heritage Consultants. And all with shipping manifests pointing toward Norfolk. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the silence of the chamber pressing in around him like a held breath. He'd stood in this very room when Elizabeth's casket passed through Westminster. He'd carried the velvet cushion holding the sovereign's orb. He could still hear her voice from that informal inspection 3 years ago, measured, private, touched with dry humour, telling him, "These aren't just objects, Sergeant. They're stories. They don't belong to me. They belong to what comes after me." So what the hell was Albemarle doing with her jewellery? He pushed back from his desk, boots echoing softly across the marble floor as he walked to case 17 where the brooch used to sit. The morning sun was just starting to filter through the stained glass windows high above, casting coloured light across empty pedestals. Nathan opened the hard copy ledger. Yes, they still kept paper records, and flipped to section 4. There it was, logged by hand 3 years earlier. Signature, E2R. His jaw tightened. Nathan Corbin had never been the type to sound false alarms, but something was rotten here. And if the Queen's personal heirlooms were disappearing into thin air, this wasn't about preservation or public interest. This was theft, dressed up in fancy paperwork and proper procedures. And somebody was about to pay for it. Lady Caroline Whitby didn't raise her eyebrows often, but when Nathan slid the file across her antique tea table, she didn't just raise them, she got up and locked the door. They were tucked away in a forgotten reading room on the 2nd floor of the Royal Archives, sunlight filtering through leaded windows onto leather-bound registers that most people had forgotten existed. Nathan had made sure no one from the Modernisation Committee was scheduled that morning, just Caroline, her porcelain cup of Earl Grey, and 40 years of institutional memory. She studied the dossier like a detective examining evidence at a crime scene. "Crates left Windsor 12 days apart," she murmured, tracing the shipping manifests with her finger. "No press coverage, no security logs, and no customs paperwork? None that I can find." The trail goes cold at Sandringham. Caroline let out a bitter laugh. You realise what you're suggesting here? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. Nathan tapped the Albemarle transfer code. That's a ghost authorization. We retired it when Elizabeth died. Someone reactivated it without proper clearance. She sat back, her expression unreadable. You think Camilla's moving pieces privately? I think Camilla's estate is receiving royal jewellery that was never meant to leave this castle. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Then Caroline reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a small black leather folder. There's someone you need to meet. Inside was a business card with no royal crest, just a name. Inspector Ruel Chudary, Metropolitan Police Heritage Unit. Tell him I sent you, she said quietly. And Nathan, be careful. This is exactly the kind of problem that powerful people prefer stays buried. Inspector Ruel Chudary met Nathan at a side entrance of Scotland Yard. No uniform, no visible badge, just a dark wool coat and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. Lady Whitby said you had concerns. I've got missing inventory, falsified shipping record, and a consultancy that doesn't exist on any approved vendor list. Chowdhury examined the printed manifests with the focused attention of someone who'd seen this pattern before. These codes are familiar. We investigated something similar 2 years back. Private artifacts from Balmoral turning up in Geneva auction houses. No charges were ever filed. Quiet retractions all around. The palace discouraged further inquiry. Nathan's voice hardened. Well, this time we don't get discouraged. They spent the next hour cross-referencing Windsor clearance codes with off-site shipping logs. Crates labelled household memorabilia had passed through the rear loading docks, escorted by civilian contractors, then redirected under Norfolk estate clearances, Camilla's private property, registered separately from Crown lands. One name kept appearing on every approval form, L.R. Meredith, described as a heritage logistics consultant who'd previously worked for private collectors in Monaco and Dubai. Do I have grounds for action? Nathan asked. You've got enough for a review warrant, Chudary replied. But if this becomes political, you'll be ordered to stand down before the paperwork's even filed. Nathan stood up, tucking the evidence folder inside his coat. Then I'll brief the Crown before it gets political. He left Scotland Yard with more than just documentation. He had confirmation that this wasn't his imagination. The Queen's personal effects were being systematically stripped from Windsor and funneled into private hands. And if nobody acted soon, they'd vanish into the international art market forever. The wood-panelled conference room in Clarence House didn't look like the kind of place where covert operations got approved. No digital screens or tactical displays, just an antique table, a bronze bust of King George VI, and a grandfather clock that had been marking time through centuries of royal decisions. Colonel James Stretton removed his reading glasses and placed them carefully on the leather blotter. His military bearing never wavered, shoulders square, hands steady, but his voice carried new gravity. You're absolutely certain about the provenance? Nathan nodded. The pendant, coronet and brooch were all logged under Queen Elizabeth's personal custody. None were cleared for transfer. None appear on the rotation registry. I verified against the original handwritten ledgers, signed by the Queen herself. Stretton looked down at the evidence folder again. And you believe they're at the Norfolk estate? They were shipped under false documentation marked as household inventory by a contractor with a history in black market auctions. The Colonel's voice dropped. Does His Majesty know? Not yet, sir. A quiet knock interrupted them. The steward barely cracked the door before stepping aside as Prince William entered the room. He didn't speak immediately, just glanced at the folder, then at Stretton, then finally at Nathan with an expression that was both curious and concerned. Sergeant Corbyn, he said evenly, I'm told you have something urgent. Nathan stood and offered the evidence folder. William didn't take it right away. Instead, he asked a simple question that cut straight to the heart of everything. How long have you been assigned to the Legacy Chamber? 7 years, sir. Her Majesty appointed me personally. And in your professional opinion, what we're looking at here is this theft. Nathan met his gaze without flinching. Sir, I believe it's worse than theft. It's erasure. William nodded once, then took the folder and read through it methodically, page by page, no rushing. When he finally closed it, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Colonel," he said, "how quickly could we assemble a discreet retrieval team?" Stretton responded immediately. 12 hours if we keep it unofficial. 10 personnel, plain clothes, 3 with Heritage Unit clearance, the rest ceremonial guards repurposed for logistics. William's jaw set with quiet determination. No uniforms, no publicity, no scandal. We recover what's missing, document everything, and handle this internally. He turned to Nathan. "You'll lead identification. This is your discovery. You see it through." As William moved toward the door, he paused and looked back. "This isn't just about recovering stolen property," he said. "It's about trust. If we lose that, we lose everything that actually matters." The door closed behind him, leaving Nathan with the weight of what was about to happen. Colonel Stretton tapped the desk once with his knuckles. "You heard him, Sergeant. You're not on watch duty anymore. You're on a mission." Nathan gathered the evidence folder, knowing that the next time he walked into this room, his career might be over. But at least the Crown's legacy wouldn't disappear without a fight. The aircraft hangar at Northolt looked unremarkable from the outside, just another weathered building tucked behind outdated radar equipment and Ministry of Defence transport vehicles. But that grey Tuesday morning, it became the staging point for the most sensitive royal operation in decades. Inside, under harsh overhead lighting, a folding table had been positioned between 2 sand-coloured Land Rovers. On it sat a slim briefcase bearing Privy Council seals, a document tube containing the retrieval warrant, and 6 black folders, each marked with call signs and operational parameters. Colonel Stretton stood at the head of the table, flanked by 2 officers from the Metropolitan Police Heritage Unit. No insignia visible. No official titles used, just silent understanding about what needed to be done. Nathan arrived last, wearing civilian clothes over tactical gear, carrying the evidence folder that had started everything. Around him, royal guards who'd been reassigned from ceremonial duties adjusted their dark jackets and checked their equipment with professional calm. Stretton didn't waste time on speeches. "Each of you has been briefed individually. You are not enforcement officers today. You are recovery specialists. This is not a criminal investigation. It's an internal correction executed under Crown authority." He placed his hand on the sealed warrant. "You're acting on direct orders from the Prince of Wales under sovereign prerogative. No media, no leaks, no mistakes." The team nodded in unison. Nathan recognized Corporal Hamza Dar from their Afghanistan deployment. They exchanged a brief shoulder clasp, the kind of wordless communication that came from shared experience under pressure. Inspector Chowdhury finished synchronizing the body cameras with the secure recording system in the command vehicle. "Continuous documentation," he muttered to himself. "If this goes sideways, we'll need clear evidence of proper procedure." "How sideways could it go?" one of the guards asked. Chowdhury looked up with grim humour. "When you catch someone this powerful in the middle of systematic theft, they either fold completely or fight back with everything they've got." Nathan busied himself organising the sealed evidence containers in the rear of his assigned Land Rover. He'd been in tactical situations before, urban patrols in Helmand, checkpoint operations, even hostile crowd control. But this felt different. They weren't entering enemy territory. They were walking into the private estate of the Queen Consort to recover stolen memories. Jewellery that had witnessed christenings and state broadcasts, coronations and private family moments. Pieces that carried the literal fingerprints of a 70-year reign, now sitting unlawfully under someone else's roof. One of the communications officers handed Nathan a discreet earpiece. "Frequency check?" "Clear reception," he replied. "Estate access codes unchanged since the Queen's final inspection." Stretton raised his hand for attention. "Move out!" The convoy rolled from the hangar in formation, 3 Land Rovers and 1 unmarked civilian vehicle. No emergency lights, no radio chatter beyond essential coordination. Just the steady, purposeful advance of people who understood that once history was lost, it couldn't be purchased back. And they were running out of time to prevent that loss. Camilla's Norfolk estate looked like something from the pages of Country Life magazine. Wrought iron gates draped with climbing roses, perfectly maintained hedges, limestone walls covered in ivy that had been trimmed to look wild but wasn't, the kind of studied English elegance that whispered old money rather than shouting about it. But Nathan wasn't admiring the landscaping. He was cataloguing the security cameras, noting the sightline, and observing that the Western Service Road remained unmonitored, exactly as the blueprints had indicated. The estate had originally been part of the Queen's broader Sandringham holdings, but Camilla had expanded it significantly. New wings, underground storage areas, and what the building permits described as climate-controlled preservation galleries. Officially, it was a private retreat. Unofficially, it had become something else entirely. The convoy split according to plan. Inspector Chowdhury's team approached the main entrance with the Heritage Unit officers. Nathan's group positioned themselves near the staff entrance, where the original corridor codes would still work. The third vehicle took overwatch position on the bridle path, ready for evidence transport. At precisely 6:02 p.m, Chowdhury rang the front bell. An elderly steward answered, grey waistcoat, surprised expression, clearly unprepared for official visitors. Chowdhury presented the sealed warrant with quiet authority. This is a heritage protection action under royal prerogative. We're here to recover Crown-classified artefacts currently held in unauthorised custody. The man looked genuinely confused. Her Majesty isn't in residence. That's not required, Chowdhury replied calmly, but cooperation would be appreciated. Meanwhile, Nathan approached the service entrance and keyed in the old code, 1952, the year Elizabeth became Queen. The electronic lock clicked green without hesitation. The rear corridor smelled of lemon oil and cold stone. Nathan and Corporal Dar moved first, followed by two logistics specialists carrying museum-grade transport containers. The staff they encountered seemed more bewildered than resistant. This clearly wasn't something they'd been prepared for. A young curator, barely out of university, tried to block their path near the east hallway. You can't just walk in here. These are the Queen Consort's private collections. Nathan's voice remained level. They're crown artefacts under sovereign protection. Please step aside. The young man obeyed, though his hands shook slightly. They reached what had once been the estate's carriage house, now converted into a climate-controlled gallery space. Brass vault doors lined the walls, each marked with discreet plaques. Nathan checked the registry numbers against his documentation. One vault bore the designation Gallery 3, Royal Heritage Collection. He looked at Dar. This is it. Any alarms? We're about to find out. Nathan entered the same code sequence. The heavy door opened with a soft mechanical whisper, revealing LED spotlights and rows of museum-quality display cases arranged like an exclusive exhibition. The Queen's sapphire pendant sat in the centre under a glass dome, bathed in perfect lighting. Her coronation brooch gleamed from a rotating display mount. The emerald coronet was positioned like a crown jewel in a private museum, which Nathan realised was exactly what this was. He let out a slow breath. They weren't preserving history here. They were preparing it for sale. The vault felt colder than the corridor outside, and not just because of the climate control. Nathan stepped carefully across the threshold, taking in the full scope of what Camilla had created. This wasn't storage. This was presentation. Professional lighting, museum-grade cases, handwritten placards in elegant calligraphy. Even the royal collection didn't look this polished. But what made his chest tight wasn't the sophisticated setup. It was seeing the Queen's personal jewellery displayed like merchandise. The sapphire pendant sat centrepiece under its glass dome, exactly as he remembered it from that winter morning when Elizabeth had worn it for Princess Anne's memorial address. He'd adjusted her mourning veil that day, had seen how the pendant caught the light streaming through Westminster's windows. Now it sat with a small engraved placard, Mid-20th Century Sapphire and Diamond Pendant, Private Collection. The casual rebranding made him feel sick. To his right, another case held the emerald coronet, last photographed at a private Commonwealth reception. To his left, the coronation brooch, with its South African diamonds, a gift from King George VI that had never left Elizabeth's personal custody, all relabelled, all recontextualised, all stolen. Behind him, Dar whistled low. Jesus, it's like robbing a memory. Nathan knelt to photograph each piece through the glass, the body camera recording timestamps and inventory numbers. Evidence that would stand up in court if it came to that. A voice cut through the vault's silence. "That's quite far enough." A man in an expensive navy suit entered, silver cufflinks, leather portfolio, the kind of confident bearing that came from handling high-value transactions. His jaw was set with corporate determination. "L.R. Meredith," he announced briskly, "Heritage Preservation Specialist. These items are under professional archival review. You're interfering with a legitimate cultural preservation process." Nathan stood slowly, meeting his gaze. "Under whose authority?" "Her Majesty the Queen Consort." Meredith produced a letter bearing Camilla's official crest. Nathan didn't bother looking at it. Instead, he reached into his jacket and unfolded the retrieval warrant. "Crown Directive, signed by the Privy Council and authorised by the Prince of Wales. These items are under sovereign protection, not private curation." Meredith's composure flickered. "This isn't a courtroom, Sergeant." "No," Nathan replied, stepping closer, "but it's about to become evidence in one." Meredith glanced toward the corridor, clearly calculating whether to call for backup or legal intervention. Nathan didn't give him time to decide. He turned to the logistics team. "Document everything. Photograph each case. Begin transfer to secure containers. No delays." Dar moved to the coronet display, while the others opened their temperature-controlled transport cases, museum-standard containers designed to preserve priceless artifacts during transfer. The activity in the vault remained professional, but Nathan could feel pressure building somewhere above them. They'd been in the estate for less than 20 minutes, and they hadn't encountered Camilla yet. He looked once more at the sapphire pendant. Even under artificial lighting, the stone seemed to hold captured starlight. He remembered Elizabeth once saying it made her feel less alone during long state tours abroad, that older jewels remembered what silence meant. Now it sat in enforced silence, displayed for buyers who would never understand its true value, not if he could help it. The rhythmic click of heels on polished stone announced her arrival before she appeared. Nathan didn't need to turn around to recognize the sound. Camilla entered the gallery with two aides flanking her, moving with the kind of controlled precision that suggested barely contained fury. Her coat was dark navy, her gloves still on, her posture radiating the authority of someone accustomed to having her word be final. She surveyed the scene, the opened cases, the documentation equipment, the transport containers, with the expression of a general assessing battlefield damage. "This is private property," she said, her voice sharp as winter air. "You have no legal right to be here." Nathan straightened but didn't step back. "Ma'am, this is a Crown-authorised recovery under sovereign directive." Her eyes narrowed. "That pendant was gifted to me personally, as were several of these pieces. What you're doing is institutional overreach, an embarrassment to the monarchy itself." Nathan met her gaze directly. "The monarchy embarrasses itself when it forgets what it's supposed to protect." "You're a guard," she replied icily. "You don't determine policy." "No, ma'am. But I swore an oath. To the Crown and to the legacy of the Queen who entrusted these items to my protection." Camilla's composure cracked slightly. "That Queen is dead." The words fell into the vault like stones dropped into still water. Nathan took a careful breath. "That doesn't mean her intentions died with her." One of Camilla's aides stepped forward, speaking urgently in her ear. "Ma'am, perhaps we should allow them to conclude. This will attract unwanted attention." Camilla silenced him with a look that could freeze mercury. "No, not yet." She turned back to Nathan, her voice dropping to something dangerously quiet. "You think I don't understand what this really is? A power play disguised as duty. You want to make a spectacle, drag this into public view." "We've done the opposite," Nathan replied evenly. "No press, no uniforms, no announcements. We came quietly because someone had to come. Her jaw tightened. These pieces sat untouched for years, gathering dust in archive rooms nobody visits. You think hiding them behind Windsor's walls honours their significance? They're not decorative objects, Nathan said. They're history. And they don't belong locked away in private basements. Camilla moved closer, and suddenly the entire vault seemed to shrink around their confrontation. You realise this destroys your career? Nathan didn't blink. My career was never what I was protecting. She laughed, but there was no humour in it. Noble sentiment. Utterly impractical, but noble. Then she turned to her staff. Seal this room immediately. Nothing else leaves until I've spoken directly to His Majesty. 2 estate employees moved to block the vault entrance. Nathan reached for his earpiece without hesitation. Control, requesting immediate clearance authority. A pause, then a calm response. Inbound. ETA 8 minutes. Camilla's expression shifted as she processed what she'd just heard. Who exactly did you just contact? Nathan met her stare without wavering. Someone who remembers what the crown actually means. The distant sound of rotor blades rolled across the Norfolk countryside like approaching thunder. Camilla turned toward the noise before anyone else registered it, her shoulders stiffening with the instinctive recognition of something beyond her control. The helicopter was unmarked, grey, official, carrying no royal insignia but somehow unmistakably carrying royal authority. Outside the estate's windows, wind swept across the manicured lawn as the aircraft settled in the clearing beyond the formal gardens. No ceremony, no escort, just the quiet efficiency of power that didn't need to announce itself. Prince William stepped out wearing a dark coat, followed by 2 legal officers carrying sealed portfolios. He walked toward the estate's entrance with the measured pace of someone who'd already decided how this would end. Inside the vault corridor, Camilla waited. Nathan and his team had stopped their transfer operations but hadn't retreated. The pendant, coronet and brooch were already secured in transport containers. The rest sat documented and tagged, ready for immediate removal. William entered the vault without preamble, his eyes sweeping across the elaborate display cases, the professional lighting, the people holding their breath. "Sergeant Corbin!" Nathan stepped forward, spine straight. "Sir?" "Status report. All items located and verified, sir. No damage detected. Ready for transport." William nodded, then addressed the legal officer beside him. "Present the decree." The younger man opened his portfolio and read from an official document bearing the sovereign's seal. Under Article 8 of the Crown Legacy Protection Act, all personal effects of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, unless expressly transferred by witness testament, remain under perpetual Crown custody. Effective immediately, all items removed from Windsor Castle are to be returned to royal protection. This directive carries the full authority of the sovereign and the express command of the Prince of Wales. Silence filled the vault, like rising water. Camilla stared at William without speaking. William met her gaze with calm finality. "These aren't collectibles, ma'am. They're not investments or diplomatic gifts. They are memory made tangible. My grandmother's, my father's, this nation's." Camilla's voice, when it came, was barely controlled. "You think this humiliates me? You think I'll quietly accept this intervention?" "It's already concluded," William replied simply. She stepped forward, her composure finally cracking. "You believe a vault full of jewellery is what makes the monarchy sacred. It's not precious stones that matter. It's the people who wear them." "Then honour the ones who came before us," he answered, his tone never rising but carrying absolute conviction. For a long moment, neither spoke, just the faint sound of helicopter rotors winding down in the distance. Finally, Camilla turned to her staff with rigid dignity. "Let them finish." No apology, no admission of error, just surrender disguised as cooperation. William addressed Nathan directly. "Secure everything and return it to Windsor before dawn. Issue a sealed report. This operation remains classified indefinitely." As he prepared to leave, the legal officer paused beside Nathan. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You just prevented history from disappearing forever." Nathan didn't respond. He was already turning back to the transport containers. There was still work to finish. The sun hadn't yet touched the horizon when the convoy rolled back through Windsor's ancient gates. The Land Rovers moved without fanfare, their windows darkened, their precious cargo secured in museum-grade containers. No press waited in the courtyard. No ceremony marked their return. Only a solitary groundskeeper paused his early morning tasks to watch them pass, perhaps sensing the significance of their burden without understanding its nature. Nathan insisted on carrying the final container himself. He refused assistance from the logistics team, not because the case was heavy, but because it felt important to complete this personally. He walked it down the marble corridor, through the quiet of the vault wing, past glass cases holding centuries of royal history. He reached the legacy chamber as the first light of dawn touched the stained glass windows high above. Case 17 still held the impression where the sapphire pendant had rested, a delicate depression in the silk cushion, like the shadow of memory itself. Nathan opened the transport container with steady hands and lifted the pendant back into place. It settled perfectly, as if it had never been gone. The morning light, streaming through the coloured glass, touched the case just as he secured the lock, breaking the sapphire's blue fire into scattered gold across the chamber walls. He stood there for a moment, remembering Elizabeth's voice during one of those formal inspections years ago. She'd picked up this very pendant absent-mindedly and observed, "Not everything precious needs to be seen to be valued." He'd thought it was just conversation then. Now, with the recovery warrant in one pocket and an uncertain future in the other, he understood what she'd meant. Some things weren't meant for display or sale. They were meant to be kept safe. The emerald coronet followed, then the brooch, each piece returned to its proper place according to the original inventory. Catalogued, photographed, verified. By the time the automatic lighting dimmed at 7 o'clock, every stolen artifact was home. No headlines appeared in the morning papers. But word travelled through Windsor's corridors in the way these things always did, quietly, between people who understood the difference between news and truth. Footmen nodded. Curators offered subtle acknowledgements. One of the younger guards posted outside the legacy chamber said simply, "Good to have it back, sir." Nathan found an envelope waiting at his station. Cream paper, no official seal, just one line in neat handwriting. Duty fulfilled, legacy preserved. W. He placed it in his desk drawer, next to his Afghanistan service medal, then straightened his uniform and returned to his post outside the chamber. There would be consequences, eventually. Questions from oversight committees. Maybe attempts to portray his actions as overzealous or politically motivated. But none of that changed what mattered. The Crown's memory was secure, and Sergeant Nathan Corbin was still standing watch over what couldn't protect itself. Some legacies, he'd learned, weren't inherited. They were fought for. Should a royal guard have the authority to raid a queen consort's private estate? Was Prince William right to override palace protocol for the sake of protecting heritage? And do you think royal heirlooms should ever leave Crown custody at all? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If you believe some history should never be for sale, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know someone who thinks royal guards just stand around looking ceremonial, share this video with them. Our next story is already queued up on your screen. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happened when a foreign ambassador tried to intimidate a royal guard during a state dinner and got a lesson in silence that no diplomatic protocol could have prepared him for. Click that video now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another story that proves duty goes far beyond uniform. Until then, remember, some things aren't inherited, they're protected.